Hello everyone and welcome. It is such a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for dedicating your valuable time for learning about evidence-based practice. In this session, we are going to talk about how to find answers to your clinical questions or finding documents that will answer your questions. So we will provide tips for literature searching, and we hope that you will find them useful and use them in your practice. We aim to provide enough information for you to be able to ask an answerable clinical question and find the best available evidence to answer that, which will involve two stages. One is to translate your clinical question from natural human language into a language that is searchable and usable in search systems and databases, by understanding how to combine the concepts of your clinical question using Boolean operators, including and or, and also accessing the evidence or information that contains the answer, which requires you knowing the resources that provide documents that includes your answer, and you should be able at the end of this course to run simple searches and judge the relevancy of the search results and select the documents that potentially could contain the answer to your question. Just to be clear, because many people get confused about these three different types of searches, I just wanted to clarify that there are three different types of search in evidence-based practice, and depends on where we are, we could use one of these levels. One level is searching for an evidence-based answer to your questions. It means you ask a question and you get an answer. We currently do not have a system to provide such service. The nearest one we've got are large language models like ChatGPT, and they don't provide evidence-based answer, they provide answers. That is the level that is not much relevant to evidence-based practice. We hope that in the future we will have it, but currently we don't have such system. So the only way to find the answer for us is the second level, which is finding a document, a paper, evidence that contains the answer, and it ideally is a single document, and you need to look for this needle in haystack. It is the analogy that people are using more often, and this session is going to be more about this level of searching. You have a question, you try to formulate a search query, and you find a document that contains answer to your question. There is also a higher level of searching that is for generating the evidence, and it is useful when there are so many studies answering the same question and they provide varying answers to a question and sometimes conflicting answers. So the only way to find one source of truth is to collect all of their studies, all of these studies, putting them together as a systematic review and synthesizing this evidence to say, what if all of these separate studies were a single study? What would be the answer? And that is the highest level of searching. Usually we expect that if someone goes to that level, they will involve a librarian, information specialist, or information scientist to help them with the searches, and we do not expect that level of expertise and skills from clinicians or practitioners, even though some of them are really good. But even in that level, we advise people to use a librarian. So in this workshop we are going to deal with the level 2. Let's take you to the pyramid. Well, because you cannot go to the pyramid really, I mean you cannot go to Egypt, we brought the pyramid to you. Here we have the pyramid of levels of evidence, or let's say pre-appraised evidence. On top we have systems. Systems are there so that you could ask your question, clinical question, and get an evidence-based answer. If you think we've got that, well, we wish. We haven't got it yet. The nearest thing that we have are specific systems such as RX Vigilance that is used in Canada, and that is an integrated system using the pharmaceutical information and the patient records, and it is used in pharmacies to find the possible medical errors, possible side effects or contraindications based on the patient's profile when they get a subscription. So that is the nearest thing that we've got. We don't have a system to answer our clinical questions based on the best available current evidence yet. And we haven't had it since this pyramid introduced more than a quarter of a century ago. So the next level, which is the best existing level, are the summaries. Summaries are the clinical practice guidelines, and they contain all sorts of evidence coming from the bottom 4 layers of this pyramid. So they collect the evidence that exists in one field, and then they appraise them, and then they synthesize them, and they put them together and provide recommendations. So the best known ones are clinical practice guidelines produced by the societies of each field, and you could access them in either subscribed sources such as UpToDate, Dynamed, EBM guidelines, or free sources such as McMaster Plus or Trip Database. The next level is the synopsis of synthesis, which contains the summary and some appraisal and some commenting on the evidence synthesis that have already been done. So it is commenting on the existing systematic reviews, let's say. A bit lower than that, there are systematic reviews. Even though they are in the middle of pyramid, most of the times they are the best evidence that we could find to answer our clinical questions. And the main source of them are Cochrane Library, which is free for about 100 countries because they have country subscription. But not all the countries have access to it, so it requires subscription. And then we have free sources such as McMaster Plus and Trip Database. Lower than that, there are synopses of studies. So these are the summary of a single study that has been critically appraised, commented on, and these are usually published in evidence-based medicine journals, the journals that have evidence-based in their title. For example, evidence-based medicine, evidence-based dentistry, evidence-based nursing. We also could find them in McMaster Plus and Trip Database, which are other great sources. And the lowest level of the pyramid are studies. And in studies, we have any primary study, including cohort studies, case controls, case studies, randomized controlled trials, that are considered the best quality studies for answering interventional treatment questions. So that is the lowest level of pyramid, but these studies have not been critically appraised. So if you get the skills to critically appraise them, majority of your questions probably could be answered using these studies. But as long as you can critically appraise them and apply the existing evidence to your practice. For those who don't have this time or skills, synopsis of studies, which is a bit higher level, is a good one. And if there is huge number of volume of evidence to answer a single question, then the higher level, which is synthesis, systematic reviews, are very good sources to answer the question. And for those who don't have time to read and assess systematic reviews, then there is synopsis of synthesis on top, which are published in EBM journals, or you could find them through McMaster Plus, Trip Database. And then summaries are great, because that is the greatest things we've got. And I have heard people not sleeping over the night, waiting for the society to release a guideline in the morning, because that is the greatest thing that a society can do for their members, creating clinical practice guidelines, and that could save huge amount of time from the clinicians. Where to search? We discussed it in the pyramid. So the first 3 of them, we are going to see them in practice, but also there is Pubmed. Pubmed was there for a very long time, and it is free. While the other 3 have got some free information, Trip Database has got freemium and premium versions. McMaster Access requires registration and login, but it is free. Cochrane Library, it is free for some countries. But Pubmed is completely free, and the tools that it provides, like clinical queries, PICO search, Ask MEDLINE, and evidence-based medicine, all of them are free. There are also nutrition and diet-related EBM sources. One of them is Nutrition Evidence Systematic Review. It was formerly known as NEL or NEL. It is free and it contains systematic reviews that have been done mostly to support clinical practice guidelines. You could find these guidelines on the website. So that is one of the free sources that is directly relevant to majority of the audience in this workshop. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics also has got evidence analysis library. You need subscription for full access, but you could find some free information, useful information on the website. They are doing their own systematic reviews, umbrella reviews. Umbrella reviews are reviews of reviews, and scoping reviews, and create their own guideline. And their clinical practice guideline contains almost 40 PICO questions. These are important PICO questions asked by patient, by clinicians, prioritized, and then the committee decided that these are the most important questions in the field. So it is a very important source. And they are using ABC the grading based on the grade approach that I'm sure you are familiar with. And then another source is PEN system. PEN stands for Practice-Based Evidence in Nutrition. It is subscription-based source. It contains pre-appraised evidence and summarizes the best available evidence for over 100 PICO questions, which is great. And it uses, again, grade approach. So these two sources that I mentioned, EAL and PEN, both of them are great. And I would suggest you, if you are interested, you could contact them, or you could ask your organization to contact them if you don't have access, and ask for a free trial. Because free trial will help you to know what is in it, get a taste of it, use it, and see if that is something that you would use in your practice in the future and you find it really helpful. Then you could get a subscription to one of them or both of them. If you are a member of societies in Canada and United States, you would probably have complimentary access to one of these. There is also one last source that I just added last night, and that is Food Science and Technology Abstract. It is more from the food side rather than nutrition and diet, but sometimes people find it useful. It is also not free and requires subscription. Among these sources, I had a few slides sent by one of my colleagues, and I'm going to present a bit more about PEN system. So this system is an online food and nutrition database. Has got 200 knowledge pathways on nutrition and food topics. Obviously contains summaries of evidence, recommendations graded by grade approach. So you will find a summary of evidences here that has been curated, carefully selected, and carefully appraised. And it has a dynamic system, so continuously there are people sitting there updating them for you because you don't have time to deal with the evidence. It contains background information and also summaries in case you want to study between two patients. There are summaries about their conditions that you could study. It contains practice questions and toolkits that provides a step-by-step approach to a topic. And then there are handouts that you could print out and give to the patients as well, and trending topics. It also has very detailed table of content on knowledge pathways, on population health, life cycle, health conditions and disease, food, nutrients, and professional practice. And you could access at least the table of content for free to see if it is good source and you should get subscription to. And the way that they are processing this content is that they continuously scanning the literature, they are asking questions, and they sift through the existing literature to find the best ones, critically appraise them, and then summarize them, providing recommendations based on grade approach. So it saves a lot of time for those who don't have time to do all of this. But apart from resources, let's say we know the sources, we know the database, how we are going to run searches. Because you are using PICO approach, so almost everywhere in the world in evidence-based practice, they are using PICO approach in clinical sciences. What you need is to break down your question into PICO elements. So here, for example, I have a question that if diet is better than ibuprofen for migraine in reducing the pain. I could have another comparison. I could have diet versus exercise, or diet versus combination of exercise and diet. But that is how you break a clinical question into 4 elements. P stands for problem, population, or patient. I stands for intervention, if it is interventional question. C stands for control or comparison, and then O stands for outcome. Breaking it down gives you the main concepts, and you get rid of the words that will not mean anything to the search engines most of the times. So we usually use only some of these PICO elements in searching, and the main ones are P for problem and I for intervention. And the reason is that usually 1 or 2 are enough. Majority of evidence-based sources don't have a lot of content, because it is very hard to curate this content, critically appraise them. You need experts sitting there doing this work. That's why they are not big. So you are not going to get a lot of results. Just using 2 elements is enough, because if you add more and more elements, you are going to get less and less results. Another thing is that reporting of the other elements, for example, if the control group is psychotherapy, there are hundreds of terms for psychotherapy. There are hundreds types of psychotherapy. So just gathering them, putting them together and searching is not just easy. So most of the time people consider any control because they are interested in single intervention. They want to compare it to everything else, which means you don't have to search as C in your PICO question. But sometimes it is specific, like you want to compare ibuprofen with paracetamol or acetaminophen. Then that is when you need it is something very specific. Outcomes also, because majority of clinical research are measuring a lot of outcome, and the journals are not allowing you to have more than 250 words or 400 words in abstract. The researchers usually cannot report all the outcomes, so they report them selectively in abstract, and they report the rest in full text. And when we are searching bibliographic databases, usually we search title and abstract. So if we search for the outcome, it is likely that we find only the papers that have mentioned it in title and abstract, and will miss the rest. But if we don't search it, we are going to find all of the papers with any outcome. So that is one of the reasons that we usually don't search all of them, but not all the time. There are times that, for example, you are looking for adverse effects or a certain adverse effect, and then you could use it, for example. How to search? It depends on the system. So if you go to the website and you see that the website has provided you a PICO structure, there are 4 boxes there, line by line, one of them for P, one of them for I, one of them for C, one of them for O. That is simple. You just put your PICO items, each one of them, in the designated, let's say, search box, and that's it. But sometimes you have a single search box. In those cases, you need to put all of these elements that you want to search, either P, I, or more elements, in a single box. And we usually use Boolean operators to combine the PICO concepts. How it works: if you want to combine the synonyms or relevant words of one concept, we use OR. In this case, I'm using olive oil, or oleic acid, or fatty acid, or linoleic acid, or palmitic acid. And these are the contents of olive oil. Some people would say that we don't need that because we are just interested in olive oil and just search olive oil, or others would say that we need just the first two. The thing is that if you want to combine the synonyms and the relevant words of one concept, use OR. And each time you add OR, with one term, it increases the number of results. In rare cases, the number of results will not change because the previous terms probably are getting all the relevant documents. But it will, in most of the cases, it will increase. It will never decrease the number of results. It will always increase the number of results, and in rare cases the number of results will not change. And then we have another Boolean operator, which is and we use and to connect the PICO elements to each other. Here P and I, migraine and aspirin. What does it do? It reduces the number of results if you were searching any of these concepts alone. If you were searching migraine alone or aspirin alone, it will get you documents that contains both migraine and aspirin. And then if we have a longer search strategy, we use brackets to put the synonyms of each concepts in one set. So here I have two bracket sets. So I've put olive oil set in first set, and then I have and then the second set contains either the condition or the outcome. So it is very important to remember that we must use brackets if we want to search everything in a single line and in single search strategy, because otherwise the system cannot recognize when your concept ends. And there is a way to remember when to use or and when to use and. Or is used within one concept and used between the concepts. Here Venn diagram shows you how and works. If there are a set of papers about migraine and set of papers about bipolar disorder, and you use and between these two, you are going to get papers that are talking about the relation of migraine and bipolar disorder. And it will be the overlapping area. So each one of them are big sets, but when we use and, we get just the overlapping smaller set. With or, it is different. Even though when we are using or, there might be overlap across each one of these sets, the search results that each one of these terms are going to get. When you use or, it's like Play-Doh. There are 6 sets of Play-Doh there, and then you put them together. It creates a bigger set than each one of them. Enough of these slides. Let's go to the real practice. So I've got here a few sources that provide PICO structure as their search boxes. So this is Embase. Embase is the second most important medical database after MEDLINE in the world, even though it is bigger than MEDLINE. It is more European MEDLINE, but it contains a lot of English journals, a lot of European journals, and journals from other countries in the world. And it provides a PICO style search. Obviously this source is not free, but I just wanted to show you that this structure is here. And majority of the PICO searches that now you see in the systems were not in place 15 years ago or 20 years ago. They have become more common much more recently, and the database is now the value of providing this structure for those who are not familiar with complex searches. So you just need to type in let's say migraine or cardiovascular diseases here, and then intervention olive oil, and then comparison if you have diet or nuts or exercise, and then outcome could be again cardiovascular diseases, risk of cardiovascular diseases, and then go ahead with the search. But as I mentioned, this is not a free source, and you may not have access to it. I just wanted to show you how many sources have got this function. This is another one, Cochrane Library. We usually so Cochrane Library contains 2 databases. One of them called Central, which is the largest database of randomized controlled trials. And then the second database, which is also the name of the journal, is called Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews, that contains systematic reviews, which is the greatest level of evidence that we could find for majority of the questions. So if I type in here olive oil and it suggests me select one. It also automatically could tell me that this is an intervention. Because the set that Cochrane library has is about 10,000 systematic reviews, I wouldn't go adding, let's say, and cardiovascular. I wouldn't do that because I know that this is a tiny set. So I will try just with the intervention to see what I'm getting. And there you go. We've got 4 systematic reviews, and obviously none of them are relevant to what we are looking for. But you see that the set wasn't big enough to have a very complex search. So that is the PICO search that you could get. So you could add more concepts as you type. It will suggest. It could suggest by mistake something else. You could change it. But anyway, it provides multiple boxes as well. But still, you can use and or here. It also has search manager. So the search that we had here, if we just copy and paste it, and then press continue, it gives us the results. So if I click, I will see the results, but also you can limit it to one of the databases. So if I click Cochrane reviews, it will just give me systematic reviews. If I click trials, it will give me randomized controlled trials. So I'm just going to go with Cochrane reviews for now to see if we are getting anything. So there are 174, but they will not be directly olive oil because the search is more sensitive. We've included other synonyms, but it could give me something of relevance. We have omega-3, secondary prevention, and it has been published. This one is 2018, this one is 2020. So you see that we could get with more sensitive search. With PICO search we didn't get much, but here, because we used more terminology, we could get good information. So that's from Cochrane library. And now we come to TRIP database. So TRIP database is one of the oldest sources of evidence-based practice. TRIP stands for Turning Research into Practice. It is older than Google. So John Brassey, who created this, was a bright guy. So we had medical search engine before we having a search engine like Google. So this is free, and the important and life-saving features are free. That's good news. So I put olive oil and cardiovascular diseases, and I just press search. It gives me the search results. It's got 834. That's a good number, and it has sorted by quality. I want to find the relevant one rather than high quality one first, because I mean this one looks relevant, but it is firstly primary research, and second it is talking about type 2 diabetes as well. So I'm just gonna change it to relevance to get the most relevant one on top to answer my question. So if you look at it now, it gives me still primary research. And some of them, I'm not sure if they are high quality or not. One thing that it does is that it shows you a pyramid here, like the pyramid that I showed you, and it shows red down there, showing that it is not highest possible, quality evidence. So if you want highest quality, you could either search for all, you could filter it, all secondary evidence, or just go for systematic reviews. So if I go for systematic reviews, not bad at all. So we are getting the second one, is 2019, is Mediterranean style diet for primary and secondary prevention. So that is a good one. That could answer my question, and it is a Cochrane systematic review, which is known to be of high quality. And then there are evidence-based synopses. If you are interested, it shows where they are coming from, what is the source, what is the year. We need to consider that. Or you can go directly to the guidelines to see what clinical practice guidelines are telling you. So this one is from Canada, 2016. It's about prevention of cardiovascular diseases. There's also one 2020 from United States. There is a possibility to filter them, but it is a pro. It means you need to have a subscription to filter by country. But there aren't many. I mean, you could check them. There aren't that many. And also you could filter them by date as well. If you want most recent ones, you could filter them. But I usually sort them with relevance rather than quality, because you could actually get the quality from here as well. You could get systematic reviews. And then there is an option here for key primary research. These are the high quality, usually randomized controlled trials with a lot of patients or sample size. Sometimes there are 7,000 people participating, sometimes 50,000 people participating. So they are considered highest level of primary studies, and they are published usually in top journals. This one is published in New England, and it looks like that is something that could answer a question. Also the second one and the third one. So you need to choose which one is more appropriate. You could download it and then you could start appraising it. So it has got other sources that you could filter based on, but the things that it does is that first showing this pyramid, allowing you to filter based on the level of evidence or level of the documents that contain the evidence. You could sort it based on quality, relevance, or date. Sometimes date is more important, so it depends on the situations. But also it gives you, for randomized controlled trial, it gives you the risk of bias, how biased this study might be. It is very important to know that this is not intelligent system at all. This is automated system. This use automation and some features of machine learning. For example, this feature is not human ranking. It comes from robot reviewer that can automatically assess the risk of bias of only randomized controlled trials. So if you look at controlled trials, you can see that all of them has got such ranking here. So, but also in TRIP you have also PICOS search. In PICOS search you could enter your condition, and then the intervention, and then run the search. And obviously it is possible to use and or here as well, so there is no problem. It shows 18 results. That is more specific. The other one gave us hundreds. This one is giving us 18, and then if you look at them, probably you will find the majority of them relevant. So that is more accurate. But obviously you can add or oleic acid. It doesn't change much. It means that oleic acid has already been mentioned in them. Here you can add all myocardial infarction. Doesn't make much difference. But if you get back to the other search, it was the simple search, you may try it as well. So you can go cardiovascular disease or and olive oil or oleic acid. There you go. You've got more results here. And one thing that you need to consider is that if you don't use and in many sources, space would mean and between two words or two sets. Here, because we have two sets, and then with and, you get the same number with or without and, because in most databases, if you don't put any and, space equals and. That's good to know, just something to remember. So This is one of the greatest sources and oldest ones, and if you go premium you could have access to full text, more features obviously, but the life-saving features, as I mentioned before, are free. So this is Pubmed, and all of you are familiar with Pubmed, have used it. You could just run simple searches in Pubmed using and or. It will work here exactly. And then I would suggest you to use, because you are looking for a single document to answer your question, use the best match ranking rather than others. And then it will give you, not bad. You have good one here, you have good one here. Oh, butter. Why not? And then, yes. So you get the most relevant and best match on top. It doesn't mean that this evidence is exactly what you want. You need to appraise it, obviously. You don't trust anything that you find. But also it gave us 1500 results. If you want to reduce it, there are ways to reduce it or increase it. So if you add something with or here, obviously in a set because it is more than one, it increases the results, even though slightly. So without it, only 4 results, increases 4 results, but it increases the results when you add something with or. It's the same with Olive, obviously, but what if I want less results and more focused results? Then you can do several things. One of them is that you could add square brackets, open and closed, TI, capital or non-capital, doesn't matter, and cardiovascular diseases, TI. And then it will give you just 26 results, because it means that these words will be mentioned in title and abstract. Sorry, in just the title, but you could even change it to title and abstract if you want. It will be TIAB, and don't worry about remembering all these square brackets and title, abstract, how to do it, because it has a help that contains all this information. But adding abstract obviously is going to increase the number of results. From 26 we go to 475. So you could play with it. It seems that if you are busy and you want targeted search, title would do. But also we have other syntax that we could use. Instead of disease, we could add, just to consider the plural one, we could add a star in there, and then it should increase the result, hopefully. Just a few, just 6. But it increases the results because now you are getting not only disease in singular form, but also plural. So you could use different syntaxes. You could take control. If you don't take control, why we are getting a lot of results is that we are not taking control. So if you just go with this, you get a lot of results. Yeah. So if you go to advanced search to see what happened, I'm just opening the details. This is what happened. So usually the databases expand your search to make sure that they are getting everything. So they are searching for a lot of things that could be relevant or not relevant. You may find them, and they are searching everywhere. It's all fields, all the fields, title, abstract. Even if there's author name, like Olive, you might get it. Who knows? Because it's searched all the fields. So that is, I just wanted to show you. But when you take the control, like when we used with title, look at that. I mean, look at that. It hasn't touched anything. It has searched exactly what we wanted. So that is also something to know, that databases try to help with expanding, but sometimes they are not helping. They are just making the things worse. Pubmed also has got a feature called clinical queries, and it is also old feature. Probably it was one of the first features that Pubmed added, and people really were excited at the time because that was the best thing that we had. Now we have obviously Trip Database and McMaster Plus, and so, but at the time it was really life-saving. So you could choose what is the type of your question. Usually they say that these are the type of questions. Also there is a type that they have not mentioned here, that is facts or frequency. For example, if the patient asks what percentage of patients who are taking this medication or supplement will show this side effect, this is a number, so the answer is a number. So here you could choose that it is a therapy question, diagnostic question, etiology, prognosis, or clinical prediction. And then you could choose if you wanted to focus on what you want or go a bit broader, so not just the cardiovascular, but also the subcategories of cardiovascular diseases, not just olive oil, but also if there are ingredients used in olive oil, and more broader search, so not just in title and abstract, but also go beyond, go for the keywords that the authors used. So we use the narrow one to get less results first, to see how many are there. It seems nothing happened, but if you go a bit down here, you will see that. And not surprisingly, you could see that some of the studies that you are getting here are relevant to what you were getting from other sources. But the thing is that here you have no option to sort. So if you want to sort them, you need to see the results in Pubmed and then sort them based on relevancy, and highly likely you are going to get similar results. And that's good news, because it shows that you are finding the same or similar evidences wherever you go, and that shows that your search is working. But obviously you can use and or depending on situations, and you could expand your search, you could broaden your search if you are not finding a lot of results. There is also something called PICO search that allows you to separately enter your PICO elements and run the search. As you can see, this sort of tools were made when handheld devices were popular among clinicians. So these are designed in a way that they fit into handheld devices. So that's a good one. That's a nostalgic one for many people. But there are also other tools in Pubmed, like Ask MEDLINE, and then evidence-based medicine as well. I'm gonna show you briefly. This is Ask MEDLINE. It's supposed to get the natural language question. So you write your question here. What is the side effects of this drug, or which one should I give to this patient? Is it this one or that one? So you could just type your question there and then submit it, and it will create the query that fits your purpose. So that is another one. It also has Android app. Just good to know. I didn't know actually this exists. And then there is evidence-based medicine section. It is similar. It is actually the same thing as Ask MEDLINE, but it gives you more control on describing the P element, I element, C element, and O, and then you could submit it to PICO search or submit it to Ask MEDLINE. So it gives you two options here. So it is the combination of the previous two tools in one place. Let's go to the final source. So this is McMaster's ACESSSS smart search feature. So McMaster has got other features as well, but this one, if you register and log in, will allow you to create evidence alerts. So it will, if you run a search and save it, it will send you updates whenever needed. And then it will show you the pyramid of evidence here, just to guide you that there is a pyramid, and they are going to show you pyramids. So I entered olive oil and cardiovascular diseases to see what happens. It's a bit slow. So while it is working, I just wanted to mention that it says what's up, and on top of the pyramid, obviously we don't have the system yet, but it categorizes with, look at the pyramid, and it shows that this summary of clinical text. It gets the information from Dynamed, EBM guidelines, as I mentioned in the pyramid, best evidence, and up to date. They cannot integrate because up to date does not permit them to do that. But I say that if you click here, you can get the results. You have the guidelines here, 0 item. So in here you had more items. You have ACP Journal Club for systematic reviews, and obviously synopsis of systematic reviews, and you have McMaster Plus. You also have original studies. So this is something that you might be interested, 9 items. And if you couldn't find anything, it says that would you like to see non-appraised results, which is the bottom of the pyramid. So these are a bit better because they have synopsis. So there are rankings by the clinicians, there is a critical appraisal or some sort of commenting on it. As you can see, there's a rating given by the clinicians, and it shows a list of the results, and not surprisingly you see similar results here. That's good. That means you could find what you needed. So if I get back to the results, so you also have advanced options here. So you could actually enter population here, discipline, categories, and then sort by what. There are simple features that anyone can use. It also has allows you to choose if you are a physician, nurse, or rehab, so that it could provide more relevant information to you in here. So this is also a useful source. So yeah, you've got good tools in your toolbox to do what you need. So I'm getting back to the slides now. These are my final slides. Some tips from information scientist. When you have a question or you want to run a search, think and search like a patient. If you want to know what is your patient question, go to TikTok, go online, go see what patients are talking on the forums or on YouTube or the comments under YouTube videos, because you really want to serve your patient and you need to know what is going to come to you. There are all of things that they hear or see in TikTok or online, and they will ask you. So it is better to be prepared. The second advice is to find a clinical librarian, information specialist, or information scientist in your organization. If you're working in an organization or universities, very important to have access to these sources. Some of the clinical queries, clinical question, could be very tricky and requires expert people to do the searches. Remember that evidence has been created in controlled, perfect research world. So when you come to the real world, it may not be that perfect. That's why it may or may not work. So you need to consider a lot of things when you want to use that evidence. Appraise the evidence all the time. It doesn't matter where you find. If it is top of the pyramid and down there, you always should be critically appraising, critically thinking about the evidence. And you need to make sure that it also fits your patient's preferences, values, and pocket, because some of these interventions or suggestions could be very expensive. They cannot afford it. And then ask yourself that what your skills and years of expertise in the field tells you. So don't rely on just evidence, because evidence-based practice is the overlap of evidence, clinical expertise, and patient circumstances. And recently we know that you need to consider socio-economic, cultural context. I think I just created a word here. You need to consider how your patients feel. Sometimes they don't need a prescription, they just need someone to listen, someone to understand them. In some cultures, some of the interventions you cannot give them. They may ask, is it a kosher, is it halal, does it contain alcohol? We don't get alcohol. Some of them say that what is the cheapest option. So it all depends on these circumstances and context as well. And if you don't find anything, there are several reasons. Sometimes the evidence does not exist, simply it is not there. So if the patient asks, you say, I don't know. If you ask, you don't know. You could always approach your society, ask to add their PICO question to their list, or try to find it. But sometimes it doesn't exist. Sometimes it exists, but not in the where you are looking for. So you are looking in the wrong place. You need to change your database or source. Sometimes you need to ask your colleagues. They may know. Sometimes it is there, you just missed it because of human error. You are tired, you have a life running and you have a job running, and you may just easily miss it. That's why having a second person like a clinical librarian looking at it will be great. And then evidence exists, but you are not skilled enough to find it. Again, you need someone skilled to look for it. And then the evidence sometimes exists in a database that you cannot access to it, or it is in a paper that it is behind paywall, so you cannot access to it. And the sixth one is to consider that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So just because evidence does not exist doesn't mean it is not true. It doesn't mean it is not false. And that is the source of claims and conspiracy theories that you see coming from the social media all the time. There are things that we couldn't simply test. One is, an apple a day keeps doctor away. How am I going to test it? Let's say we start from childhood, give a child an apple every day for 70 years. Who's got that money to run that study, to create that evidence? Or you should have 5 pieces of fruits every day. I mean 5 a day, yeah? So I had 5 watermelons a day and I ended up in hospital. So that didn't work for me. What should I do, doc? And these are the things that comes, the simple things. You shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat that. And how people are searching, they are Googling reasons that milk is bad. And then Google gives them 10 reasons that milk is bad. If you search milk is good, Google will give you 10 reasons that milk is good. And that is how it starts, because these are not evidence-based, and sometimes it is not just easy to create the evidence. The dark side of Moon, it is exciting. Evidence-based practice is very exciting, but you need to be realistic as well. First, do no harm. And the harm is not always physical, sometimes it's psychological, emotional, economic. So it is very important to consider that you do your best not to harm the patients. Stay professionally registered, insured, and legally protected, because it is very important in case something happened. And that will make it easier for you to practice evidence-based. And we say evidence-based. It means that if you ever end up in court, you could put the evidence in front of these people. If it is clinical practice guideline, there is nothing to be done. They cannot do anything to you because it is coming from your society. Everyone is following it. So if intervention is experimental, obtain proper written official consent from your patient. It's very important to keep you legally safe. And then explain the intervention to the patient before giving it. Tell them that in 70% of the patients who have taken this, there was 25% improvement. Don't tell that it's gonna work or it doesn't work, because that is not how the medicine works. I mean medications or any sort of because patient take the medicine and go out and have a lot of alcohol, or smokes a lot, or drinks a lot of coffee, and then things doesn't work because you don't know what happens. Or patient takes something and then gets a lot of stress that produce a lot of hormones, and that changes the way that medications work. So explain to the patient that there might be side effects, what is the possibility of side effect, and all of that. And then objective evidence is better than subjective judgment in court. If you ever end up into court, it is very important to stay on the safe side, and that is to be evidence-based. And then the experience shows that those who are practicing evidence-based practice, they will become evidence-based practice researchers. So you are a practitioner, you are going to become researcher, because you are going to see a lot of evidence and you are going to read a lot of evidence. And occasionally you have questions that have not been answered, so you want to answer them yourself. So you design your own research and create the evidence that does not exist. It doesn't have to be a randomized controlled trial, which is expensive to run and to conduct. It could be a systematic review, scoping review. You could get a training, have a team, or get funding, and then you could do it yourself. You could obtain consent from your patients and collect observational routine data from your own clinic, your own practice. And once Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Create the evidence you want to see in the world. A big thank you for your time, attention, listening, and I hope that you have learned a lot. Thank you very much, and thank you, Bradley. And thank you, Rus, for inviting me for this session.